Did you get a chance to watch any of that Zach Morris's trash?
Not only did I watch some of that, I watched several of them, and I have several thoughts. And I was going to ask.
Oh my gosh! Because the moment I saw it, I was like, I need to show this to CJ because this is what he calls white boy logic. Like, this is every single episode is white boy logic.
Oh yeah, no, it exactly is. In every single episode, you're just like, yeah, Zach Morris is the worst. Not only is he the worst, but he got an entire generation to like applaud him for his schemes.
Yeah, he is the worst piece of trash person. How did he ever become the star, the main character of the show?
What up, bros?
What up, bruh?
And welcome to Bruh Meets World.
When it's Bruh Meets World.
I'm Siege.
And I'm TC.
Okay, so speaking of Zach Morris, where you at, boy? Where you at?
Oh, speaking of Zach Morris, I didn't really care for this episode, if I'm being 100%.
You know what? This is you and me, and this is how we see things, but I liked this episode.
It's all right, but I could easily do without it. The only great thing about this episode is that Jason Marsden's in it. That's the only great thing about it.
Yes. We're going to get into it, and I'm so excited. Okay, so let us get into it and start with our Tell Me About It. So, with the Tell Me About It, it says that Cory is assigned to act as the father of a modern family.
Yeah, I think I think there's more going on, but if you were just simplifying it, I think that's pretty on point. I mean, it does kind of ignore Eric's storyline, which I would argue is maybe the A story.
That's what I was going to say. If anything, I was just a little bit upset. I was like, you're not wrong, but this episode is not about Cory.
Yeah, Cory is more of an observer in this episode. He's observing Eric's behavior. He's observing the way Alan and Amy treat Eric. And then from there, he comes to his big conclusion. So, I mean, he's definitely has the biggest learn, I would say.
I don't know. I think Eric learns the hard way.
yeah, that's true too. So, Eric definitely deserves to be at least mentioned in that, I would say.
Exactly. I just think that Eric deserves to be mentioned. But anyway, let's get into it. Our opening scene. Feeney is showing the class a scene of Leave It to Beaver. And what do you think about that?
Well, I think that because of where the episode goes, I forgive it because it's more just saying like, hey, this is what a perceived traditional great American family looks like, which isn't wrong. That's Leave It to Beaver was that. But I'm glad that we stray away from that as the episode progresses.
Well, not only that, but I thought it was a great reminder that Feeney goes that, at this time, the census of the time period said that the modern family was a father, a mother, and 2 kids, which I thought was a great reminder that it's not even that like research had shown that this is how it should be or that this is what was healthy. This is just what someone told us back in the 60s, and we've kept this.
Yeah, it just seems it seems like when you imagine a family, I don't know, that's exactly what I imagine too. And it's
but we feel that way because that's what we've been fed. I mean,
sure.
I mean, especially since I've been looking at and reading a lot of books on like humans throughout the years and like just our journey. Most families were like huge. So the idea that it would even be limited to 2 children.
And it's interesting too, because at least for us, like I can imagine like in the 60s and everything like that, but in the 90s, there was so many broken families on television. So many families were like, you think of like Step by Step, or you think of like, family Full House or something like that, were these untraditional family members. So we, even growing up seeing that, it's funny that you and I still have that mindset of a family is what Leave It to Beaver says.
Exactly. And that's one thing I always, whenever I talk to someone about how influential marketing is, I say the fact that as Americans, I can say grandma's homemade apple pie and everyone knows what I'm talking about, even though several people's grandmother has never made an apple pie. But like, you know what that's supposed to look like. And that's impactful.
And even you saying it, I'm imagining your grandma as being white. Is that weird?
Exactly, right? That's so funny. But yeah, that's exactly what comes to mind. So anyway, what Cory points out is that families are yesterday's news. Um,
Well, what he's referring to is the fact that he's like, Feeney, you're a little late to this because we did like a family assignment last year. So if you're thinking of doing it this year, think again.
yeah, and then Feeney is like, you know what? I agree with you. Which what I really liked. He's like, I agreed with you, and Corey's like, that's not like you. And he goes, well, here's the assignment. And Corey's like, yeah, that's the Feeney I know and love. And he's like, this year we're gonna do ideal families, and everyone's gonna play a different role in this family. For example, Mr. Hunter and Mr. Minkus are going to be brothers.
To be honest, I don't really understand why there are children or like multiple children per family unit in this class. I mean, I get that the 4 member family setup as the Leave It to Beaver tradition goes is relevant, but there's only 12 kids in this class. So
That's
are
three
there
sets of families.
okay, all right, yeah. All
Yeah.
right.
That's 3 families. That's
That
three
works.
assignments to go throughout the school day. Yeah, and I think it works perfectly, especially for what Feeney's trying to say within this class. And also,
It would
even
have
if
been nice. It
go
would have
ahead.
been nice to just see like the tail end of the group before them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. To get just some kind of variety and see how other students handled the assignment, which I
As far
believe.
as I'm concerned, there's only 4 kids in this class,
Oh, as
actually.
far as Feeney's concerned, it's like
Yeah.
really clear. He has favorites.
Oh man.
But yeah, so Shawn and Minkus are of course going to be brothers, and there's like this whole.
Even Feeney's just like he's like, oh, I'm excited for this. Like he's trying to stir shit up.
Yeah, for sure. But what is interesting about this is they're not just going to be a family unit. Each student has to describe what they think the other ideal version of that family member would be, and the students have to play that out, which I do think was an interesting approach to the assignment.
Yeah, and this kind of goes to a bigger thing of relationship expectations.
Yeah,
And it's just like, what do you believe the ideal person is versus like, expectations versus reality, I guess. Which I feel is kind of a big learn to try to teach kids.
I mean, when we're in Feeney's class, we're always going high bar here. It's like
You're right. You're right.
you're not just learning PEMDAS, you're learning exactly how that affects, I don't know, the ecosystem. So,
Yeah, yeah. Because it's funny because this assignment doesn't seem to have anything to do with any of the core subjects.
social studies.
I mean, yeah, I guess. I mean, social studies to me was more geography based, but
Well, the only
yeah,
reason why I'm saying it is because with Feeney, I think whenever we do something like this, he either refers back to social studies or it's usually
sure.
with a book, so he can say literature. But
No,
yeah,
this is a lesson they were learning from. I guess Leave It to Beaver and lesson plan seems a little strange to me, but well, he's Feeney. He can teach what he wants. He's got
yeah,
tenure.
exactly. That was Feeney's version of showing a movie in class.
Oh man.
I like it. It kind of implies that Feeney, was hungover on, I don't know, Merlot the day
I would
before.
imagine like that's it. And that's what he's like. I'm gonna come up with a fun assignment. Screw these kids. Yeah, I'm gonna put Minkus and Shawn as brothers. Fuck them.
Honestly, that makes more sense, and I love it.
All right, we're gonna roll with it. Feeney had scores to settle, guys.
Exactly. All right, and then we get it. Wait, before we go to our theme song, we of course get the reveal that Cory will be dad and Topanga will be mom.
Which is great. And as soon as they said that the 4 of these kids were going to be working together throughout the episode, I got really really excited.
Yeah, I mean, and it is. It's a really good episode. All right, so we get our theme song.
Yep.
Then moving on, what is really good about this? All right, so our next scene opens up in a mall, and I thought that this was
Yeah.
significant for a few reasons.
Sure.
One, we haven't really, I thought about it, we haven't really gone to sets outside of.
The first note I took was this is a brand new set.
Yeah, brand new set. We haven't really done this often. The only thing we've kind of seen differently is when Cory went to the spelling bee or whatever. I think like that was
Yeah.
somewhere new, but even that was like in a school, so it was still like in a school environment.
Sure. Yeah, this is our first time going anywhere outside of like the school or the home dynamic, or even like to someone else's home. I don't even think we've been to Shawn or Feeney's or anyone else's house yet. So,
Yeah, exactly. We
um,
haven't really been elsewhere. So I thought that was important. But also, the setting of it being in a mall is kind of showing that we are entering these teenage years.
and it's funny because as soon as I saw it, to me it felt way more like I don't know. I guess I got way more like 90210 vibes than I got of what I know their teenage years to actually be like.
Yeah, I agree. I get what you're saying. But it's because we're dealing with, like, at that point in time, I don't think they actually, like in the future, we have chubbies and that's where they hang out and it's all of this stuff.
Sure, sure.
Whereas at this point in time, we're dealing with Eric's teenage years, which are not Cory's teenage years.
Well, it's funny you bring up Eric because apparently he's had a best friend since he was 3 years old, and we're just meeting him now.
Exactly. So this is when we meet Eric's friend Jason, which, by the way, I've been looking forward to Jason
So much.
I'm so excited
I am
for
such a huge fan of Jason Marsden. Like, obviously, I don't. For those who are listening, Jason Marsden plays Eric's best friend. He is also an amazing voice actor. He's done the voice of Max in the Goofy movie. He did Thackeray Binks in Hocus Pocus. He is also like a TGIF all-star. He's been
Yes.
in Full House. He's been in Boy Meets World, and he was also in Step by Step for a long time.
He was also in Blossom. He was also in Erie, Indiana.
Yeah.
Like, he's just done.
Did you ever watch The Weekenders?
Yeah, of course I watched The Weekenders.
Yeah, he did the voice. No, he did The Weekenders.
You think I don't know that? I am, dude. First of all, again, as TC was explaining, Jason Marsden is like '90s kids royalty. Like, you may not
he's
know
great.
him, but he is a part of everything you've loved. And on top of that, I just kind of always thought he was cute. So
yeah, and I think he's
really
super like charming and dynamic. Like as soon as he's on the stage, like he adds so much humor. He adds so much, even though he's kind of like played as this kind of wimpy man character. He plays it just so strongly. I don't know. He's great.
You know what's also interesting to me? Even like the way and his dynamic with Eric, in reality, he's just like Cory. He's like Cory.
He is the Cory to Eric Shawn.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Eric is Shawn and Jason is Cory. And like just the fact that he's a little bit shorter, but he's sarcastic and he's like, he just has this very good wit about him that reminds me a lot of Cory. And I was like, that would explain why him and Eric are even friends.
Yeah, and we actually do end up seeing more of him and Eric's dynamic more in the second season.
Yeah.
So that's something to look forward to.
I'm really excited because I just love Jason.
He's great, man. He's Max.
Yeah, exactly. And if you knew how much TC and I loved Goofy movie, you would understand why.
Well, I mean, everyone knows that it's the better of all '90s Disney movies, but you know,
it really is. Okay, moving on. We're at the mall.
Can I just say something real fast?
Yeah.
The reason why we like a Goofy movie, it's the only black animated Disney movie. That's all I'm going to say about
it. Yo, we could go in there. No, we can't. But like, you're right. You're not wrong.
It's the only black one. That's why we relate to it so strongly. He's listening to like hip hop and stuff, and like wearing hoodies. Like,
God, I have
and having like problems with his like distant dad. That's way more relevant to us than Aladdin.
Oh my God, I just have so many thoughts right now.
I know we're going off topic, guys. Sorry.
We'll have to come back to this for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, the boys are trying to hit on girls, and Jason's like, "Yo, can just once a girl come up and say, yo, I've had my eye on you, and you want to talk?" And of course, he has like this little fun bit, and he's like, would that be too much to ask? And out of nowhere comes Alexis, who is this really attractive older woman in the story, who's played by Kathy Ireland.
I have no idea who that is, by the way.
She is a supermodel, and
the only supermodels I know of the '90s were like the Secret Angels, you know.
I'm not even going to ask why, but
because those were the only ones that like were like established by name. You know, we're like
quite a few were, especially when we're talking 90s is when supermodels were established. And also, I mean, for me, anyone who was in the Freedom video.
I was going to say that George Michael Freedom video.
Exactly. That's like pretty much, that was it. like a how-to guide.
It's so funny because I literally was thinking that Freedom video before you said it. Like that's all I know of supermodels for the most part.
Well, you had like several varieties. Just like now, there's like Instagram models, and there's like a tier system. There were different levels of being a model, especially a supermodel. But
Guys, we're gonna do a bonus episode where we just talk about a Goofy movie and '90s models. So don't worry, we're gonna get back to you on all of this.
you know what? And I'm right there with you. Okay, so moving forward, Alexis comes over and taps Eric on the shoulder and says those exact words that Jason's been discussing, which was, "Hey, I've had my eye on you." And she was like, "Do you know how handsome you are?" to Eric. And Eric is just, of course, besides himself.
Well, he's just like stuttering Stanley all of a sudden. Like he can't remember his name, he can't put words together. He's just kind of staring there dopely. Like Jason's like trying to cough Eric's name to him so he remembers what his own name is.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
ridiculous. But what's interesting to me is, especially when she approaches Eric, I'm thinking about all of the kind of male models to come out at least a little bit later. And Eric probably could have been a model, like a little male model, just with his type and his hair and everything. Because I know, like, what's his name? Ashton Kutcher. And there's another one who they have almost the exact same look as what Eric has right now.
Oh, I think Eric could have been like an American Eagle model at the very least. I mean, exactly. There's tiers. There's tiers.
But anyway, we.
Oh, and by the way, the model's super salty to Jason.
She is. You have like this teenage boy who is like clearly trying to hit on her, and she's just like, you stay right here. She's like,
yeah, I guess that's true. He's the only one trying to like mac it to her. Eric's not really trying to do that. He's just so like taken back by like her presence, I guess. He's not getting the chance to be too creepy.
Yeah, whereas Jason's full on creep.
You know, he sees a chance, he dives in, man.
Yeah, you know what? You got to give it to him. So anyway, she, of course, is telling Eric that he could be a model, and she's trying to ask him to do it. And at that point in time, again, this is when Jason reminds us that they've been friends since they were 3 years old, which is weird, and that he must choose.
I will say this, which is really funny. The reason why I think this is so believable, and this is something I've learned from the cast commentary, is that Jason Marsden and Will Friedle are actually real life best friends. Like I think they were like best man in each other's weddings. Like they've been like lifelong friends. So when you see them on screen, they have a chemistry that just naturally works, which is why I think it's so believable. Or at least, you know, them trying to force a Shawn on this last minute is kind of bad writing, but they tend to pull it off well because of their chemistry.
You know what? Yeah, but I just don't understand, and you know, maybe it's a me thing and hindsight and all this other stuff, but I don't understand why they had to give us that since we were 3 years old thing. They could have known each other since homeroom, and it would have worked just as well.
Yeah, they didn't have to give us a history of their relationship. They didn't have to throw that on us at all. You're right. They could have just been guys at the mall. We would have been like, whatever.
Exactly. We would not have blinked twice. We've seen several kids come and go, and with the younger crowd. And
I will say it would have been nice to have like a scene like where like they're in the kitchen in the morning and like Jason stops by and like Amy says hi to him or something to kind of establish that versus just saying we've been friends since we were 3.
Exactly. I mean, we even get a little bit more history with the assistant manager than we do with Jason. So anyway, on to the next scene. The next scene, we have the main cast of kids in the kitchen. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, what's really interesting is that they're really challenging these roles of just like I said, setting those expectations, but also like even like, you know, the roles of a mother and a father. And I think that Amy and Alan kind of reflect that in this episode too. Just the different parenting approaches. I don't know if it's gender related, but I thought there was some kind of gender bending going on with the
I would agree.
Yeah.
I think
which is nice.
We are challenging. I mean, this entire episode is kind of made about challenging expectations and what you think the role a specific person should play in the family. And I think they do it
Yeah,
throughout.
those established norms that you just kind of question. Like, Athene's having us question those established norms, which is
Exactly,
nice.
which is fantastic. Also, I didn't say it at the last scene, but I wanted to mention it. Us being at the mall also reminded me that our kids are getting a little bit older. We're starting to see them all, like the clothing is starting to change, the heights and everything. Again, besides Minkus, everyone's starting to actually look like
Yeah,
a little
even
bit older.
Topanga looks like she's getting older.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I really like. Even when the first scene when Topanga was sitting down, I was like, she looks older.
And it's so funny because I think this is the last scene, the last season, before all their voices change.
Yeah.
So that's really starts to get funny because Cory's voice gets ridiculous at points.
Yeah, that's going to be fun to look out for. While we're talking about Cory and Topanga, Topanga's ideal husband would live in line with the Navajo spirit.
She wants to marry a Navajo Indian, which doesn't make any sense to me. Why is this little girl's idea of an? It's so strange that this is so specific to what she wants and needs in a husband.
Well, Topanga is supposed to be weird at this point in time, and then also it kind of makes sense to me. She has like a new age family, and it makes sense that they would the ideal here would be someone who's more in line with nature.
Yeah.
But Cory wants Topanga to be the type of mom/wife that lets him win at video games and doesn't care how dirty his room is and plays hockey all the time.
Never expressed any interest in playing hockey before this.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what's really interesting to me is Topanga points out, which is kind of very true to what we've learned through the cool girl monologue. She's like, you basically just want a friend who you can marry. So, like, why don't you just marry Shawn?
I thought this was super interesting how they handled this, by the way.
Exactly, because their reaction is like the boys just kind of give a face, but they don't say anything like
They
ill or
don't say
no or
like
like
ill or no or anything to establish that that would be a bad thing.
yeah,
They just look at each other and Cory goes, "I wouldn't marry him because our kids would look weird" or something like
yeah.
that.
He goes because our kids would look like horses, but it's
But
just
even just making a joke that like, oh well, if we got together, like implying that they would like have kids or anything like that, I just feel that that was such a better way to respond than gross.
exactly. That's what I wanted to point out. Clearly, for me, it's a very big sign. But when you see something like this, which we've already established the problems that Boy Meets World can have with masculinity, they handled this particular moment really, really well in my
I
book.
wonder if this is before or after that whole like Seinfeld. Not that there's anything wrong with that episode.
That's actually really important and good to discuss.
Because I feel like that's like at least from what I remember, I felt like that's when the conversation started to switch a little bit. Is when I felt that like it stopped being this automatically like thing you talked about in the negative light, and it was like, oh, nothing wrong with it. It's
Not
just
that there's
not for me.
anything wrong with that.
Yeah,
Which to
yeah,
this day I think is a great follow
it
up.
is. It is.
Okay, enter Eric, and this is what I really love. Eric comes in, he jumps on the counter, and he's like, "Don't hate me because I'm beautiful." And what's everyone in the kitchen is just like over it, and he's like, "I got discovered today," and
Yeah, I thought he was really
immediately
obnoxious.
Shawn's like, "Did you get discovered at the mall?" And each one of the kids here seem to know that it's a scam. And I'm like, how bad is it that these little kids who are younger than you, years younger than you, all know that this is a scam?
Well, I think the whole point was just to kind of point out that Eric was honeypotted. Like there was this beautiful woman who came up and just started saying these things that he was just so in shock that she was even talking to him that he just kind of blindly agreed to it. And I think that's why like he was fooled a lot easier than some of the kids were. But what's interesting is that Minkus is like, oh no, like that's true. I got discovered at the mall too. And Minkus is supposed to be the smartest of the kids, so maybe it's book smarts versus street smarts, but Eric doesn't seem to have either.
I'm gonna say no, because that would be no. I don't believe that at all. If anything, I believe that maybe Minkus's father got hoodwinked and like they used Minkus as bait. I just don't see the same tactic working on Minkus.
Yeah, that's strange. But yeah, yeah, Eric is obnoxious throughout this whole thing, and honestly, I didn't really care for this whole Eric as a model storyline. I thought it was just kind of dumb.
I think it's really smart because it does what not only does it help us learn this lesson and we go down the avenue that we do, which is a really good example of great parenting and real world stakes. But also you have something like this is one of the more believable, I'll say, scams or something that we can do that's very innocent.
Yeah, I
Like
guess that's
especially
true.
in the 90s, we get a lot of very special episodes about people
Yeah.
modeling, which is important. But this one is just played for what it is, which is like a no, he's a good looking guy, and someone wanted to take advantage of him in the financial way.
Maybe if the character that female model character was a little bit more dynamic, I would have been a little bit more seduced by that story. But I don't know.
Okay,
I struggled with it.
I'll give
As
you
far
that.
as just like the depth of it all. But you know,
Yeah. Well, I mean, in this, we find out that Eric's already has paid $90 for modeling photos. And, the kids, as I mentioned earlier, already see that as a waste of money. And when Alan and Amy come in, they find out about it. And Alan is just like irate that Eric would spend this much money on something that, just it's a waste.
yeah. And I do like the way that I don't know. I mean, I guess we should probably just. I wanted to hear your thoughts on this whole Amy versus Alan parenting technique.
So I have some thoughts about this. So what we're talking about is in the scene, Amy immediately she sees how hyped Alan is, and she's like, "I want to speak to you outside." And Alan's like, "Yeah, but like I want to deal with this right now." She's like, "We need to talk outside first." And they go outside, and she's like, "I know what you're gonna say, and I know that you're gonna basically be angry at him and demand that he go get his money back." And Alan's like, "All right, you know me, but why don't you know him?" She's like, "Well, he's more complex than you," which I thought was a little bit of fun. Um,
Which I also don't believe.
well, I mean, I kind of do, especially at this point in time, because Eric is a teenager, so he has a little bit of his mom and his dad in them, and we've already
Sure.
seen that Alan is a little bit predictable.
Yeah, I guess so. And I understand where Amy's coming from too. She just wants to make sure that Alan allows Eric to grow on their own because we've seen that throughout the season that Amy has that parenting technique in the same way that George has that teaching technique.
Yeah, well, what I love is Amy goes, "Look, we've made our mistakes with money. Let him make his." And I really enjoy this because to me, Amy took a moment and she saw this for what it was. She was like, all right, yeah, maybe he got scammed. Maybe it was, maybe this could go in a really bad way, blah, blah, blah. But first and foremost is he is starting to make his own financial decisions. He has his own money. He's going to be making his own decisions with this money. And we have the foresight to let him know that he is independent, but his decisions have consequences.
And also, I guess like it's better that he learn over like $90 modeling photos versus anything more elaborate than that.
Yeah, exactly. And so Alan's like, "Oh, wait, so you just want us to do nothing?" She's like, "We're not doing nothing. We're trusting that he'll learn from these mistakes." And as soon as she says that, Alan's like, "Yo, I've been a parent for 15 years. I know not to trust my kids." And Eric comes out and he's like, "You know what? Thank you so much for not jumping down my back. I'm gonna go and try to get this money back." And Amy's like full on gloating and just like, "Yo, don't worry. I married you for your body." Um,
She
and
gives him a nice slap on the ass.
and walks inside, which is what you're talking about, that nice flip of these gender roles.
And I do wonder, it seems like Amy's parenting technique is a positive one, but ultimately Eric completely goes against this and ends up being an ass anyway. So
Well,
is she
yes,
is she wrong in her parenting technique, or
I
is this
don't think so. I mean, we're going to get into it a little bit later, especially when we find it out. But I feel that Amy not only, because Amy didn't say that he'll make the right decision and everything will be perfect. She said that
you're
he'll
right.
learn.
He needed to learn it on his own. And I
Exactly.
think that is what ultimately happens. So yeah.
Exactly. So on that, the next scene we have is Eric goes to the mall and he, at first is like, I'm going to get my money back. And then Alexis tells him that she got him a modeling job. And this job pays $50, which I'm like, all right, well, that's kind of half your money back. But even then, it's like unless it's like a contract for continuous.
Well, she does say, she's like, if you do a good job, I can get you more money next time.
Yeah, I would just look at that contract a little bit more. Like at this point in time, I'm just like,
I don't believe he even read the contract. I think
yeah, that's a
he
very good point.
blindly signed it.
That's a very good point. So to follow that, we go back to the Matthews place, and Cory is like, "Do you know what is hard about being married?" And Alan's like, "The actually being married part." And he goes, "No, you have to be the type of husband your wife wants you to be," and that just makes for a very interesting
Yo.
moment with like both your parents being there.
Oh yeah, and Amy's like, "Do you have something to say about that, Alan?"
Exactly. I mean,
But I do want to say that I think the episode is pointing out
uh,
how unhealthy it is to try to be what someone else wants you to be, which is kind of a really big learn for a kid show. But like we discussed, this is something that they do. But
yeah,
I was like, wow, this is touching on like really fundamental like stuff that in my 30s, like I'm learning. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
this
Well,
is this is big stuff.
as you said, I feel this way often. And this episode and this scene is a very good example of it. I feel that Boy Meets World is like based on like a college thesis, and the script has just been like the summarized notes of that thesis. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
like they always have like really elaborate, big points that they hit and mention, and you're like, oh, well, like just one of those lines is something that we could explore and really go down. But
Sure, and it's interesting that they know like not to throw too much into one episode. Like so, like they especially with now that we're into the season a little bit, they found the balance where like they'll give us a line like that, and then it'll be enough to make that point, and then they'll move on with
exactly.
the rest of the story.
Exactly. So on that, Eric comes in, and not only is he accepting the job that he got, the modeling job, he is quitting his supermarket job to be a model. And immediately, like, I rolled my eyes just as I said it.
Yeah.
But, like, everyone's just like, okay, Alan and Amy in the next scene are talking to Eric and trying to convince him to really think this through. And I like the fact that Eric's like, I did think about this. And Alan was like, when? When did you think about this?
What's interesting too is that we're starting to touch on a topic that's kind of a recurring theme throughout the show, which is Eric not really knowing what he wants to do with his life.
Yeah.
It's something that comes up time and time again with him wanting to be a weatherman or him wanting to adopt a kid or whatever weird storylines they end up giving him. He doesn't really know his place in his path. And I think that's a really interesting character dynamic to throw in a show like this because he's also, along with Cory, learning, the world and where he fits in his own way.
Well, it's also interesting because that goes against the older sibling archetype. I mean,
It does.
which is fine, especially for a show like this. But it's you usually either have the older sibling who is a wild card because they are in fact a wild card. I mean, think of Denise in
Yeah.
Cosby Show, or you have the one who is like put together and aspirational, like Sandra from the Cosby Show.
Or you just have like that butthead older brother, like from Wonder Years or something
Yeah,
like that. But yeah, never. Multiple kids just both kind of struggling like this, and again, I mean that just makes these characters so much more relatable and so much more dynamic, and gives us better stories. Honestly,
yeah. Definitely. So even though they caution Eric against it and they tell him that you should really consider this, Eric says that no, he wants to be a model, and Alan even is trying to fight back. Well, actually, he's not trying to fight back. He just says that he's going to support him, and we get this funny little line which I love, which is Alan being like, "Look, I'm not the type to dismiss my kids' aspirations and just quickly toss out some parental negativity." And Cory's like, so that's it? And I was like, shut up.
yeah.
Immediately, it's like, look, I can only do it for one of you.
Well, what's interesting is that they're going through this really challenging parenting dilemma, and in the corner is Cory, who's watching everything as this observer that we've talked about, and
Yes.
he even questions Alan. He's like, why did you make this decision, and why didn't you, scold him and make him do it? And he's so confused over Alan's parenting techniques. But Alan's just a solid dad to role model yourself after. So eventually, Cory's able to put the pieces together.
Well, yeah, because Alan says it doesn't matter because Cory's like, I can see that this is going to fail, and you can see that this is going to fail, and Alan's like, look, it doesn't matter if we see it; it matters if he sees it. It matters if Eric gets the point. And Cory's like, look, if that's how we're rolling with things, I don't see why I have to follow the rules. And Alan's just like, well, ask your wife.
Yeah.
Which is a great response, especially considering how Cory opened it. But also, what's interesting to me that now that you've brought it up is, can you imagine? It's hard enough trying to be a parent or trying to be any kind of role model, knowing that anything you say to this person, they're going to take and kind of live by. For however long, but then to have to do that and make those decisions while also being watched by a third party, it sounds really hard.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure on Alan and Amy right now. Even though I feel like Alan, for some reason, gets a majority of the credit and story for this. Even though Amy's kind of it should have been an even partnership, but I feel like Alan got more screen time with it.
And you've already seen my notes because that's exactly what I point out. It's like we give Alan, or the script, I will say, gives Alan a lot of credit for kind of sticking with this idea of parenting and this lesson plan, but it wasn't even his idea. It was Amy's.
No, he literally just listens to what Amy said in the beginning, and at the end we're just like, wow, he's such a great dad.
Exactly. So in the next scene, we're back in school and the kids are playing all of their other roles. And
man, I love this, by the way. This is great.
It's really
can we
good.
talk about Cory's headdress real fast?
You know what? We can talk about it. What do you want to say?
I want to say, obviously, Cory and Topanga have this relationship where Topanga's like, I really want you to channel the spirit of the Navajo. We cut to the scene. Cory sitting Indian style on the desk with a feather attached to his head.
Yeah.
Offensive? No.
No, it is. It is. It's very. Again, it's one of those things to where I have to. I don't think we should, but I did overlook it because I literally saw it. I was like, ooh, that's not good. But you know what? It's the 90s. We're still having hard enough time getting people to stop wearing headdresses in 2018 for festivals. So I can't really be mad at them.
Yeah, you're right. Like, the Redskins are still a team.
Exactly. So but you're right. I did notice it and I immediately was like, ooh. But I was like, we just got to move forward because that in itself.
Yeah. What I do want to say is that I really like seeing cool Minkus.
Yeah, this was really funny because to kind of give us a setup, the challenge that they're given is that the oldest child wants to get a tattoo. And with that, especially with the roles reversed, Shawn is now the younger nerdy kid and Minkus gets to be the older bad boy. And they both really take to the roles.
They're both so much fun to watch in these moments because it seems like it's not even so much that they're making fun of the other person. They just seem like they're honestly enjoying this just character swap.
Exactly. I think it's really cool because, as you said, they didn't really make fun of each other, especially Shawn and Minkus. They more so, I don't know. They showed respect to how that other person approaches something. Like when Shawn's like, "Yo, I was so good at being a nerd," it kind of freaked me out for a moment. And Minkus clearly admires Shawn's approach to life.
Yeah, there does seem to be some common ground between them that they're finding throughout these role reversals, which I think is what Feeney had hoped.
Exactly. Like if you look at Feeney throughout the lesson plans, he's kind of being really observant and enjoying how they discover themselves within this role reversal.
Exactly. Yeah.
But with that, you get Cory and Topanga, who I made note, they're both judgmental towards what the other one wants. Like, even though they do, in fact, behave how they are supposed to, they both are critical about the other person's expectation.
You know what I thought was interesting too is that we talked about this in I think maybe the previous episode about how Cory and Topanga are they're really taking their time developing the relationship, and
Yeah,
I kind of enjoyed that they had Topanga there in the non-romantic capacity, like she was just another student, and I feel like that's a great way to establish their history
yeah.
just by having her around more. Like she should just be in the classroom all the time, and that's what we're starting to see.
Yeah, and it's really funny because, for example, there's something. They get the decision, and she's like, "Look, you're not getting a tattoo. I've decided to make a decision without consulting my spouse because I know that's what the type of husband you're going to be." And it's just like, it's just like a really good note of them not being romantically involved, but her
Yeah.
still having an understanding of Cory.
Sure, sure, sure. Um, can we?
But
Oh, okay. So
yeah, I was
Minkus
gonna
is
say
yeah,
before the assignment's over, Minkus pulls out and shows everyone that he's gotten a tattoo anyway, which I kind of feel like was a little bit that him and Feeney worked on together. Um,
sure.
but either way, it kind of
Well, let's.
showed.
I don't want to imagine Feeney drawing that tattoo on
No, no,
Minkus's
no, no,
chest.
no, no. I feel like Minkus went to Feeney and decided that this was something that he wanted to do with his version of, because I still Minkus is still Minkus. I see him going to Feeney and being like, "Hey, this is how I want to solve this thing in my role, and this is how I believe Shawn would." And Feeney just giving the okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Because I do not think that Minkus would just risk his grade out of nowhere.
Well, it's funny. He rips open his shirt to reveal a full torso tattoo. Um, and both Shawn and Topanga are like, "Yo, we're super into this,"
Yeah,
which is so
exactly.
weird because it's not even like a good tattoo.
Yeah, but I guess just learning that there's more to Minkus kind of made them both be like, "Yo, it
It
speaks to me."
speaks to me.
Yeah, which, and of course, Cory can't see past that. Which, if we want to get back to it, it kind of shows Cory's self-centeredness. But Cory's like, "Yo, you're messing with our grade, and we had this all planned out." And Feeney's like, "He didn't mess up your grade. In fact, you know." Sorry, Cory goes, he broke the rules. And Feeney says they always break the rules. That's what a family is.
Yeah, it's interesting that Cory's just now starting to put together the pieces of families are going to be ones that make mistakes, and I think Topanga even says like it's not really the mistakes that define the family. The only way you could really judge is based on like love in the house and things like that. So I think everyone's really learning the lesson a lot faster than Cory, it seems.
Yeah. Well, also, it's funny to me because I was like, didn't we just learn this lesson last week?
Yeah.
About like how much love is in the family is what really matters and all this other stuff.
Yeah, it seems that Cory needs to learn some of these lessons more than once, which is fine. That's how we all learn.
Yeah, sometimes you just need to learn a lesson more than once. But anyway,
Can I say one thing? I'm sorry, I forgot to mention this. At the beginning of the scene, when Shawn and Minkus are doing the role reversal, Minkus is kind of making a few jabs at Shawn, and
yeah.
Feeney's like, "Hey, be careful because when the bell rings, you guys are going to reverse roles again," as if to say like, "Hey, Shawn can still like beat your ass after this class, so be
Yeah.
careful." And Minkus is like, "Ooh, you're right," and then bribes Shawn with $5 right in
Yep.
front of Feeney.
Yep.
And what's interesting is that literally like a few episodes ago, $5 was like, I've been saving up for months for $5. And Minkus just has a five to throw at Sean. He's like, hey,
Well,
is this enough?
in that episode, if you remember, Cory and Shawn were dealing with financial troubles. Minkus had his $5 early on.
So you think Minkus comes, oh, well, maybe that explains his education as
Yeah,
well.
exactly. I think
All right.
Minkus is good.
He comes from money, yeah.
Well, not even comes from money. Maybe his family just has a little bit more of it, which is why it was hard for him to understand why Shawn wouldn't have $5.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I guess that's a good point.
Yeah. So Cory points out that Beaver's dad, nothing changed with the Beavers. And this is when Feeney points out that they weren't real. Beaver's dad wasn't real. And they do this little meta joke about, I guess it's easy to sound smart when you have the best writers in Hollywood writing everything you say, which is a great note on like how much we love Feeney, especially since his follow-up is, I wouldn't know.
Yeah, and I feel like that's I mean, Boy Meets World every now and then does break the fourth wall, but this was their first time. I thought it was really funny. I thought it was a cool meta joke.
Yeah, but also what's really interesting to me is did they have this big of a Feeny following at that time? Because it seems like it. Like from the joke, you would think that Feeny was already established within these 15 episodes of like being Mr. Feeny.
Yeah, I don't know what the reception was at the time. I was a little too young for that, but it is interesting that you see the writers essentially making fun of themselves.
Yeah, that is good.
Self-deprecation in Hollywood, guys. Come on.
So in our next scene, Eric shows up. All right, so he shows up to his photo shoot, which is the job that he got through Alexis, with two girls on his arm.
Did you notice that one of those girls is Kelly Packard of Baywatch?
I did not. I mean, I did think she looked familiar, but I did.
Yeah, Kelly Packard of Baywatch, but more importantly, she starred on the lesser version of Saved by the Bell, California Dreams. I don't know if you
I
remember
love
that.
California Dreams. That's why I knew her.
Don't wake me up when I'm dreaming. Like this,
Well, you know what?
this is a huge show for me when I was a kid. So when I
Right.
saw her, I was like, "Yo, Kelly Packard's on this."
That one had the black dude. That's why.
Yeah, Tony, he was the drummer.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my god, this is so 90s.
You're right. That was like a Saved by the Bell knockoff, just like directly.
A better version of Saved by the Bell in retrospect, guys. Sorry. Not sorry.
Actually, I haven't seen it in a while, so I don't know if it holds.
It's on YouTube and it's wonderful. All the songs are really good too.
You know what? I'll check it out. That's what I'll do. And you should too. Okay. So one of the girls, though, they kind of straight up say that they're here because Eric's a model and they're groupies essentially. And the photographer,
He found groupies so easily. He made like these whatever girls he's hanging out with seem to be the most vapid child women because like everything is like, oh, you have to be a senior with a car, and him just saying he's a model got him two girls.
yeah,
Man, these
I'm
women
like,
are awful.
I'm wondering, like, again, is this like writer room problems? Because I'm like, what do you
Yeah,
guys think about teenage girls? To be fair, we're dealing with mostly teenage boy problems, but still.
sure, sure.
All right. So anyway, the photographer, who's looked like he's seen all this before and knows what's coming up, he's just like, "Yo, go to wardrobe and like let's just get this started." And then that's when Eric tells Jason to bring the girls back so they can see his shoot and see him in all his glory.
I mean, he's just setting himself up. But again, this is a lesson Eric has to learn. You know,
Scene flip, and Eric is in a lobster costume. Which again, to me, I'm like, I know this is embarrassing for Eric, but I'm like, this is honestly not that bad for model work.
would you call this a modeling job?
No,
Like
I
the guys
wouldn't.
that like spin the signs like on the intersection.
Exactly.
Like, is that modeling?
No, I wouldn't call it a modeling job, but that's
It's
what my
marketing.
point is. He's not necessarily out there spinning a sign saying "Eat at Joe's." So
He's not even modeling. Like they have him in a dunk take. There's no modeling that's taking place. No one's taking pictures.
that's a very good point. Well, there was a photographer earlier, and does the photographer disappear?
When it's time for Eric to dunk take, absolutely. When Eric is needed to model, the photographer
So
disappears.
let's just assume, because there was a photographer. Let's assume that there was like a shoot before this, and then as like a partner piece. Either way, it definitely already seems like he should have got paid more than 50.
I also don't understand why she was so adamant that like Eric, the handsome one, more so than Jason, get this job where you're essentially in a completely covered other than your face.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I don't know that either. But on that, Eric tries to quit. And Alexis is like, look, you can't quit. You have a contract. And he says, again, being very meta in this script, they're like, do you know what it's like to dress up in a humiliating outfit and have people gawk at you like you're less than human?
Yeah.
And Alexis is like, been there, welcome to the world of modeling. Which is it's a very telling. Again, that's a very big, like, modern.
Oh, it's funny too that you thought of that in terms of modeling, because I thought of that as like oh, this male needs to check his privilege.
But no, I'm sure like that was it too. The whole thing that I thought of is that this is a very good line, and it kind of would be like maybe the moral of the story in a modern telling of this episode.
Yeah.
I just thought it was again talking about them approaching really heavy things. It's just like that is a lot to be like, yo, women have to deal with this all the time. This is what modeling is, and
I mean, she ain't wrong. She ain't wrong.
but Cory and Shawn show up at the mall, and Eric is like, "Yo, help me get rid of these girls who I have coming," and they have some fun with it, but they agree to help him.
Which I don't understand why.
Why not? I mean, like, I feel like he's still, according to Cory, Eric is still his older brother, and
Yeah.
they're gonna try. They don't try really hard, but they do agree to help him.
Oh man, this whole sequence with the girls and the thing, these girls are awful.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. So the girls immediately, like, we see them hanging out with Jason and waiting for Eric's shoot to start. The boys, Cory and Shawn, come over and is like, "Look, Eric went home. He can't do this," and he almost convinces them to leave. And then they hear that there is a contest that they can get a free lobster dinner from Larry's Lobster Locker.
They hear this. There's an announcement over the mall speakers. Which when's the last time you heard an announcement over mall speakers for free, like to win lobster? And these girls are like, Jason, you have to win us some lobster. You have to. Like, it's so strange that I've never seen like I guess like teen girls jump at the chance to eat lobster before.
Exactly. That's what I said. I was like, I feel like as great as this episode is when it comes to gender reversals, it kind of takes a few steps back with these girls.
And also, who wants to eat lobster at a damn mall? It's not
That's
even
what I'm
like it's
saying.
not even like a restaurant in the mall. It's literally food court lobster. Where
It's
is this? Where does this
Larry's
exist?
Lobster Locker. I was like, why would you eat seafood from a place like this?
No. Like I can understand like, they sometimes they have like a Long Johns or whatever, but you're not getting lobster at a place like that.
Exactly. So, anyway, as you said, the girls immediately are like, please, Jason. And they switch from Eric to Jason, like, with no loyalty. Like,
Again,
immediate.
these girls are only out for themselves. They're like, will I be seen with a model? Will I get lobster? I'm down to clown if so.
But that is, of course, enough to keep them around, and the boys can't get the girls to leave, and therefore everyone sees Eric in the lobster costume and as like in this dunk tank, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and the reason why I kept thinking that these girls were just the worst, like they really are bitches, is because like they're they're like oh, they see Eric and they're like, oh, how embarrassing, we should be more understanding, and then the girl looks at Kelly Packard and goes, then we wouldn't be us.
Yeah,
Like,
that's what I
what the
said.
hell?
Yeah.
these,
She
these
literally
women
was like,
are
we should be
awful.
sensitive and understanding. And they're like, nope, that wouldn't be like us. And I was like, damn, what do you think about these teenage girls?
Gosh, that's like mean girl shit. Like that's really awful. So I don't know. I just thought that was a little extreme.
So in our final scene, Eric, of course, is like apologetic, and Alan has just come home, and Eric's like trying to get
He's
his
begging. He has all of the food out of the pantries
counter.
onto the counter, and
Yeah.
he's bagging it as if he's at a grocery store, talking to Alan like he's a customer. And Alan's like, "I get what you're doing, but like, you
Yeah,
know."
Alan. What I love about it is Alan's like, look, that position is filled. And at first, I kind of thought that Alan was like going to be like a Bayou, or like kind of be like I reserved a job or something. But no, Alan's like, look, you quit, and I took you at your word, and so that means I had to fill the position.
And I love that Alan just doesn't give.
Yeah. I actually really like this. Eric's like what Eric says, which is really cool, and I think anyone who has actually come of age knows this feeling. He's like, "Look, remember when we used to play Monopoly, and I would land on your spaces with a hotel, and you would like let me roll again? You would call it a misroll." He's like, "Well, Dad, this decision to quit the job and try to be a model, that was a misroll." And Alan's like, "Yeah, but that was when you were little, and you're not little anymore." And
Well, in Alan's defense, like he literally begged Eric. He was like, "Please, like think this through. I will support you 100% if you decide this is really what you want to do and you've considered all the options and all the outcomes." And Eric's like, "Of course, Dad. I want to be a supermodel. Like this is my dream." And so, like, I think Alan's just really doing a great job of showing Eric that, okay, this, you're an adult and this is an option that you chose and you kind of have to deal with the consequences.
Well, yeah, it's like if your response is I'm old enough to make my own decisions, well then guess what? You're old enough to make your own decisions, and
And not get these misrules. Like, that's just not going to happen. Yeah.
exactly. Because Eric's like, look, can I be little again and have my job back? And Alan's response is no, you can't. I mean, again, I can't fire someone because you've decided to, change your mind. He goes, but we do need someone in the old night shift, which was Eric's old job when we first started the series.
And I thought that was a great parental compromise. I think
Yeah.
that was a great way of him being like, okay, no, I'll help you out, but you aren't going to get away from this scot free. Like, you're going to have sacrificed something for this.
Exactly, which is a great way of doing it. And of course, Eric takes it, and Cory, like, of course,
But I'm sorry to interrupt you, CJ. Can we just focus on something real fast before we just, because I feel like we just glossed over something.
But
We just, white male accountability just took place. White male accountability with consequence just took place.
Yeah, this is
All right.
definitely no. You're right. If we want to, I think we should have like a white male privilege jar or something.
Sure, yeah.
Because no, I mean, when you really think about it, there are so many instances with Cory and Eric, and maybe in the future we'll see it a little bit different, but like they get away with so much and so much happens. Again, going back to what we were talking about earlier with Zach Morris, where it's like this would not be acceptable for anyone else.
Yeah, but what I love in contrast to Zach, who basically got away with everything, we see Alan going, "No, you are going to learn something from this," and that's what I think makes this his parenting just so great. Again, Amy's just as good, but Alan just does a good job handling it.
Well, all right. So now we're talking about two different things. So I want to first book in or discuss the white male privilege
Yeah, yeah.
of this all, which is that you were able to quit your job, um, try out modeling, and get another job without really any downtime in between. Yes, now you don't have the job that you once did, and there were consequences, but you still now get to have some kind of financial independence. And that's just, the lesson that you learn is that if you take a risk, it may put you at a worse off place. Whereas most Black people, just not even Black people, most minorities have to deal with so much heavier consequences.
Yeah, and to the point where it's like, oh, it's nice that you can just decide to quit and be a model.
Exactly. But then I also want to talk about the fact that, as you said, Cory commends Alan on being a good father, when I'm like, yeah, Alan is a good father. He does handle this very well. We often talk about how Cory understands and is learning how good of parents he has, but it's like you have good parents, and Alan gets a lot of the praise when it's in fact Amy. From what we've seen over these last 15 episodes, Amy is the one who like sees things for what they're supposed to be, and she has like a really big foot in just how her family reacts and thinks.
Well, I think this also talks to the bigger issue of, and I forget who said this, and I'm sure it was in a movie or something, about how easy it is to be a good dad and how easy it is to be a bad mom.
Oh yeah, you're right. That is from something. But yeah,
And I think that's part of it, where like a man can just do such a minimum thing and it be seen as like, wow, he was really gone above and beyond.
yeah,
Whereas like a woman is literally like juggling everything, taking care of everyone, and she like misses one like soccer game and she's a bad mom. Like it's just it's that whole concept, and I don't really know if Boy Meets World does a lot to balance the dynamic between Alan and Amy as the show goes on, but I would like to see that because Amy deserves that.
well, that's what I wanted to say. It's like I, from my memory, I am starting to fear and kind of regret the fact that Amy. I don't think Amy's going to get her due. for this show. And it's not to say that they won't ever, give her storylines. It's just to say that, to me, especially the way that they've set her up so far, Amy is such a treasure of a character. And I feel that we focus a lot on Alan and his relationship with the kids.
I wonder how much of this is just like Michael Jacobs was just really close to his dad, and that's why all these storylines are so dad focused. Maybe it's something that's less, malicious than.
Yeah. No, again, it's not even, I don't even think that they are doing it on purpose. I think, in fact, it is a consequence of the show being written when it was, which is that, they focus on, the kind of traditional setup of father talking to their son, when in fact, I think now we would definitely give Amy just as much time with the kids.
I would hope so. I mean, she's just as good of a character, I guess. But we'll hopefully, like we said, the show goes on for another few seasons, so hopefully we'll see more from that.
Yeah, we'll keep track of that. All right, and that is our episode.
Well, you forget the ridiculous, stupid epilogue.
I was going to say the epilogue, which is
of Cory trying to be a model, and she go, "Do you have $90?" And he's like, "See ya."
Exactly. That was
the whole epilogue, guys.
Here's the thing, I did laugh with Cory trying to be the model, just because like the poses he was doing. Again, Ben Savage to me is great with comedy. So
yeah.
All right, so let's go into our Feeney Taught Me.
Feeney Taught Me lessons from this episode. I would say is that you have to let people learn from their own mistakes, that you can't set your own expectations in relationships, and that if you, I don't know, if you make a decision, you need to know the consequences before you make that decision.
Yeah, no, I mean, essentially to kind of summarize that, I think that the main lesson here is that families aren't perfect. Everyone has their own role to play, but they may play it differently than you expect. And when you do make mistakes, they will have consequences.
Yeah.
But your family's there to love you, so.
Oh, and I think the other thing is that you should read any modeling contracts before you sign.
Read all modeling contracts.
Maybe have a parent there before you sign anything.
Yeah,
because having a minor sign something without their parent doesn't hold up.
But again, I don't even know how that works, like in terms of the last couple of years, or at least the 90s. But I was like, was that contract even binding? He was 15 years old.
No, there's no contract there. He can be an employee that you can fire and whatever, but he could quit, but there's no contract.
That's a very good point. All right, a grading. What do you want to give this episode?
I'm giving it a C.
I can't believe we're going to give it a C. You know what? Would you always influence my grading, because I was going to give it a B, and I still will give it a B. But it's just, I just thought it was better than a C episode. But maybe
I just didn't think it's not that it was. There was just nothing extremely memorable about this episode. When I feel like when we're done with the season and we're looking back at it, I don't feel that this will be one of the ones that we're just like, oh, hey, remember that one? That was the good one.
I think you're right. I mean, I'm not going to fight you against it. When we do our entire look back, I may even forget about this episode.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Again, the only major takeaway from this episode is that we're introduced to Jason's character.
So I often look at it in terms of chemistry between the characters and lessons learned. And I feel like this one did have a direction with its lesson. And everyone pulled it off. So that's my...
Well, here's the thing. As the show goes on, the lessons are only going to get better and the characters are only going to get stronger. I think there is something to the actual stories that they're choosing to tell, and like what they decide is I don't know. It's hard when you're doing 24 episodes. There's gonna be filler episodes. There has to be.
And this was a really good. Again, this one kind of established Jason for us, and we started to see that we're going to be dealing with people a little bit outside of Cory.
Sure, exactly. So. Which is nice that they're expanding that world. And even next season, we really get that with a lot of new characters that are introduced right off the bat.
Yeah. Okay. So that is our episode. Anything else?
No. I mean, it was an all right episode.
All right. Thank you guys for listening. This is Boy Meets World. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Boy Meets World, or email us at boymeetsworld@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter at Extra Siege. That's XTRACEEJ. And Tony, where we at?
Well, I mean, you can do the Instagram of Brave or Me. Really, what I want you guys to check out is the Funny or Die series, Zach Morris's Trash on YouTube, because that's what me and Siege have been talking about, and it's hilarious. And the way they analyze that character's motives, Zach Morris from Saved by the Bell, the way they talk about it, I think is pretty in line to the way we're analyzing things in this podcast. So if you enjoy us, you might enjoy that.
All right. And thank you guys so much. Remember to dream, try, and do good. Later, bros.
Later, bruh.